What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. We continue here with my 2024 college football schedule preview and projected record series. The BYU Cougars are up next, and before we preview their schedule for 2024 and give them an early projected record based on how tough their schedule is, let's take a look back at what BYU did in 2023. Here were my projections and predictions last year for BYU. My projection had them at 5-7, and then my prediction for them was also 5-7, and that's exactly what BYU did. This team did go 5-7 in 2023, so I was right on the money with their projection and prediction last year for this team. And this was also BYU's first year in the Big 12, of course, in 2023 as well. This was the schedule from last year for the Cougars, and you look at who they played in the non-conference. They played Sam Houston, Southern Utah, and of course Arkansas here on the road in the non-conference. So that was a very tough non-conference game there when you had Arkansas in there on the schedule, but this team got off to a pretty good start, 3-0, defeated Arkansas. That was a huge upset there. But then when they got into Big 12 play, that's where the schedule kind of got caught up to them. You look at the losses last year, lost to Kansas, TCU, Texas, West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, and then Oklahoma State here. And you look at that stretch from October 28th all the way to November 25th. This team lost 5 games in a row, and they were already sitting with 5 wins over Cincinnati and Texas Tech. If they would have won one more game in the Big 12, this team probably could have been like 6-6 or 7-5 if they won a couple of more games in the Big 12. So, again, a 5-7 season for BYU in 2023, coming up just short of a bowl game last year as well last season. Let's now look ahead to 2024. Here is the schedule for BYU, and before we go game by game, let's take a look at who they will play in the non-conference for this upcoming season. So you look at their non-conference schedule, they will play Southern Illinois, SMU on the road, and then of course Wyoming here on the road as well. So they have a couple of tough games here on the road in the non-conference with SMU and Wyoming. You look at SMU, of course, heading to the ACC this year. That's going to be a very tricky game there on the road. Don't expect BYU to be favored in that game. And then, of course, Wyoming, same thing. They're a pretty good, sneaky group, good group of 5 team, out of the Mountain West. That will be a very tough one there on the road. And Wyoming was a pretty good team last year. They were pretty good last season, so those are going to be really tricky games here on the road. So a tough non-conference schedule for BYU, and really the only easy game on here is Southern Illinois in the non-conference. So that's your non-conference schedule for BYU for 2024. Let's go back to the schedule now and go game by game. They will start things off, of course, with Southern Illinois here on August 31st, and then after that it's on the road here at SMU on September the 6th on a Friday, of course. Then they'll play on the road at Wyoming here on September the 14th, so back-to-back road games right away here in the non-conference with SMU and Wyoming. So they will play all 3 of their non-conference games in the first 3 weeks of the season, and then they'll come back at home to open up conference play at home against Kansas State on September 21st. Then it's on the road at Baylor here on September the 28th, and then in the month of October, they get a bye week before playing Arizona at home here on October the 12th, and then it's also at home against Oklahoma State here on October the 18th. That game, of course, will be on a Friday as well. So that's their second Friday game here in the Big 12, or actually I should say not in the Big 12, but since that non-conference game there against SMU on the road on September the 6th. And then they go on the road to play UCF here on October 26th. And then in the month of November, they get a bye week before playing Utah on the road here on November 9th. So they actually get a bye week in between those 2 back-to-back road games here with UCF and Utah. You get a bye week before playing Utah here on the road in the month of November. Then it's back at home for Kansas here on November 16th. Then on the road at Arizona State here on November 23rd. And then they close things out, of course, with Houston at home here on November 30th. So that is the schedule for BYU for 2024. It is a tough schedule, but it's not horrible for BYU, not really compared to last year's schedule. You obviously don't have to play Texas and Oklahoma this year because those 2 teams moved on to the SEC. But you got Utah on the road. That's going to be a very tricky road game, but you got Kansas at home, Oklahoma State at home, Arizona at home, and then Kansas State here at home as well. So you get all 4 of those teams at home, and then you got, of course, Utah on the road. road. That game will be tough, and then you got your 2 non-conference games with SMU and Wyoming. So yeah, this is a tough schedule, but it's not horrible for BYU. So let's now get to the projection here for BYU for 2024. This is the scale I used for my projections. If it's a 1% game in the red, that percentage again is going to count as an automatic loss, and then your 20% games here in the orange will be games where BYU will be a double-digit underdog, and then your 40% games here in the yellow will be games where BYU will be a clear underdog in by about a touchdown, and then your 50-50 games will of course stay in the white. Games I think can go either way, and then your 60% games here in the purple will be games where BYU will be favored by about a touchdown, and then your 80% games here in the blue will be games where BYU will be favored by double digits, and then your 99% games here in the green are pretty much your easy wins and also your automatic wins there in that percentage. So we'll start with the easy wins and also automatic wins here for BYU on this schedule, and realistically you only got one easy win, and that's Southern Illinois here on August 31st. This is the only easy win, and that's it. You know, the rest of the games on here are pretty much Big 12 games. And then you got your 2 non-conference games with SMU and Wyoming. I can't favor BYU in any of those games just because they're both playing on the road. And SMU, we kind of expect them to be a top 25 team this year. And then you got Wyoming, that's a pretty good sneaky group of 5 team out of the Mountain West. That is not going to be an easy game either. So both of those games are going to be tough in the non-conference. There's no way you can favor BYU by double digits in those games, and then also by at least a touchdown. So, and like I said with Southern Illinois, this is the only easy win here on this schedule for BYU. I think BYU will be favored by more than 3 touchdowns, and this game is definitely over 95% here in my opinion. So again, that's the only easy win on here for BYU, and like I mentioned, there's not really any other games on here where I can favor the Cougars by double digits, and then also just by about a touchdown. So let's skip over to the games now where BYU will be an underdog in. I don't have any red games, and I don't have any orange games on here at 1% and 20% here in the range for the Cougars, but I do have games where I think BYU will be clear underdogs in. I actually got 3 of them on here: Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Utah here on the road. I think BYU will be clear underdogs in all 3 of these games here in the yellow against Kansas State and Oklahoma State and Utah here on the road. Kansas State and Oklahoma State, the reason why both of those games ended up being in the yellow just because they're playing at home. You know, these are definitely very winnable games in my opinion, but Kansas State and Oklahoma State are definitely the better teams, and I do expect BYU to be a clear underdog in those 2 games. And then you got Utah here on the road. I know that game is on the road. It's in a very tough place to play, but when it comes to the Big 12 this year, again, this conference is just going to be so competitive, and a lot of teams are going to beat up on each other, and I do realistically see a chance that BYU can probably pull off an upset here on the road at Utah. Not saying that's going to happen, but it really is possibility that they could probably do that. So that game is on the road, but I think BYU will be a clear underdog in this game, and so I got 3 games on here again that I think BYU will be clear underdogs in these games. Again, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and then Utah here on the road in the yellow. And then I got 8 games total where I think BYU is going to have like 50-50 games that are pretty much games that can go either way. I got SMU, Wyoming, Baylor, Arizona, UCF, Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston. So a couple of those non-conference games, like I mentioned earlier, I cannot favor BYU in any of those games just because they're both on the road. And I think they are pretty even matchups here. SMU, again, considering to be a top 25 team this year. And again, Wyoming was a pretty good team out of the Mountain West last year. They upsetted a Big 12 team last year in Texas Tech, so they could probably do that again this year against BYU, and they get that game at home. So that's really going to be a very tough road game for BYU. And then Baylor, Arizona, UCF, Kansas, Arizona State, and Houston. These are all Big 12 games I think can go either way here for BYU. And I can definitely see them winning like 4 out of the 8 games here in the 50-50 range because if you split those 50-50 games, let's say they win 4 out of the 8, that's going to probably give you 4 wins there, and also including that one against Southern Illinois there in the green. So let's now get a projected record here. That brings me to my projected record here for BYU for 2024. This is not my official prediction. This is simply a projection based on how tough the schedule is. So we count that one green game as an automatic win against Southern Illinois. Then you average out those 3 games in the yellow at 40%, and then you average out all these 50-50 games here at 50%, and the overall projected record for BYU comes out to be 5-7 here for 2024. So a 5-7 projection here for BYU, same projection as last year. Again, this schedule is tough, but it's not horrible. There's a lot of very winnable games on here for BYU, and I think in those 3 yellow games, they are all definitely very winnable games as well. So if they win like one of those yellow games, BYU definitely can go to a bowl game this year. Maybe best case scenario would definitely have to be 6-6. Worst case, probably like 4-8 or 3-9. If they go 4-8 or 3-9, that would definitely be a very big disappointment for this BYU team. But again, as of right now, the projection stands at 5-7 here for BYU for 2024, based on how tough this schedule is and based off of those 50-50 games. And like I said, they can win 4 out of the 8. So you count that one game as a win, and then you pretty much have 4 wins in the white here. They say they win 4 out of the 8 here. That's going to give you 5 wins, and that's how the projection came out to be 5-7. So give me your thoughts on this BYU team down in the comments below for 2024. What do you think their projected record is for 2024 as well? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.